Yeah, baby. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. No, the slip. Oh. Yeah, this time. Welcome to my review of TT Isle of Man Ride on the Edge 2 on the Nintendo Switch. It's a year ago that I tried to conquer Snaefell Mountain and I failed miserably. It's one of the most dangerous races in the world, with countless riders dying younger than they should, such as the velocity these guys are travelling at with just 2 wheels between their legs. Nevertheless, in part 1 I had a good time trying to overcome the challenge. Is part 2 though worth your hard-earned cash? Let's find out. Now, gameplay wise, a few things have changed, such as the physics being revamped, having a more faithful recreation of the sport. You can really feel the weight of the bikes as you move them into their turns in that type of pendulum effect, leaning from one side to another, and man, they feel fast. One wrong move and you and your bike are supermaning into the nearest hedge, ditch or a spectator's face. This is no joke. One wrong move here and you are falling, and I've probably won the prize for the most falls in a race if there was such a thing. Clip a curb and you're in the turf. Misjudge that turn by a centimetre and boom into a bollard. There's no rewind here, people. This is the real deal, real life truth. And I don't care how good you think you are at races like this will chew you up, spit you out until you either persist or rage quit. Now sure, it's probably more accessible than it was before, but I kid you not, it's one of the toughest games I have played, and that includes every genre. You see, what makes it tough is the speed that you're going. It's terrifying. If you don't know every inch of that track, then forget it. Then there are the controls. Not to say that the controls here are bad, they're actually very good, but the Switch is limited to not having analog triggers for acceleration and braking. Now that's a problem. See, these machines are beasts, and they're sensitive beasts. You need to be able to caress them through those turns with a tad of acceleration, easing on the throttle nice and smoothly. But you can't here, because a digital press and your bike is 0 to 60 before you can say hit me baby one more time. Imagine driving a car and flooring it every time you went somewhere, then easing off the throttle completely, then flooring it, and so on. No one drives like that, and it's a pain in the arse for games like this too, especially this one, making it more difficult than it should. But fear not, Juan has come to the rescue. Well, sort of. Now, I've made the best of it, and here's how. Luckily the game has a button mapping option, and so I mapped acceleration to the right analog stick and combined front and back brakes to the right analog stick too, pushing up for acceleration and down for analog braking. All of a sudden I have a twin stick racer on my hands. Sure, combined braking for a bike game is not ideal, as really, if you're a bit of a pro, you want to be able to control that front and rear brake independently. But if that's the case, you can have your analog front brake and place the back wheel brake somewhere else on a button to your liking. Then I placed the shift up and down on the left and right triggers, and voila, the game is programmed to recognize analog inputs, which is bloody fantastic. And that's when my experience of this game went from pure frustration to the beauty of having almost full control of my throttle, braking and shift, and that makes it a much more beautiful experience, as you can now accelerate that bike not at full throttle all of the time, making it easier to get through those turns. Now you'll still crash, but it beats having to do the tippy tapper, which is what I call it when having to deal with digital acceleration on racing games on the Switch. I tested this on MotoGP 20 and it also works there. So for those of you that are dying for having that analog experience, well, this is one way you can get it. It's not completely ideal, but trust me, you get used to it pretty quickly, and having the shift up and down on your triggers instead of acceleration, for example, actually feels like the paddles in your car in a way. Now, career mode has you taking part in a number of challenges so that you can be ready for that 60 km run up Snaefell Mountain. These are to earn your stripes, so to speak, and you can't enter the TT events until you ride for your team, earning those signatures. so you can enter. You'll require 8 signatures, and if you don't get those 8, you'll have to wait for the next season. Now, while I enjoyed most of it, I really didn't like the messy way the career mode is presented. It's too small to see in handheld, and even in docked, it's a bloody mess. It's basically a calendar offering you a choice of events each week, ranging from easy, medium and hard races, which is a nice touch if you're the more casual gamer, and while more balanced than its predecessor, still tough. Racing feels quick and, quite frankly, as I said, bloody terrifying. Talk about nailing the thrill of speed in this game. And I prefer games like this where it's you versus the clock. Some races have a mass start, others it's staggered, but it amounts to who is the quickest over a certain distance. And as you progress, you can buy other super bikes to put in your garage and use. Some races have a criteria where you can only use a certain type of bike, and there are also perks that you can get too. And perks are useful in that you can equip them to give you certain benefits, but you have to pay to use them. And actually, over time, I found them not to add too much to the overall experience. You get to race in other places, not just the Isle of Man, from tracks in Scotland, Ireland and England, but nothing beats the Isle of Man track. Now, there are challenges too that you can take part in, such as reaching a certain speed or completing a section in a certain time. All are challenging and will keep you on your toes. Each bike has its own stats, of course, and come from manufacturers such as Yamaha, Honda and Kawasaki, to name a few, and different riders can be chosen too, as well as bike models. The career mode will keep you going for a very good while, but you will need to be persistent if you are to complete it. Such as the quality of the game, I felt compelled to keep going and playing, and if you love your racing sims, you will do too. And if you prefer to race against other racers on tracks, then I suggest you look at MotoGP, which I did review. I'll put a link in the top right hand corner so you can check that out. Now, apart from career mode, there are varying other modes which you can choose, such as a quick race where you can choose 17 different bikes from the off from differing manufacturers, and some classics too. There is a tutorial mode, time trial race, and even a free roam mode where you can ride around at your leisure. Mode's a great addition. I found myself just losing hours pottering around and trying to go as fast as I could with absolutely no pressures, and I loved this mode. It was a great way for just letting off steam. There's also multiplayer modes where you can set up offline or online and play against 8 other players. Cool feature, however locally you'll be taking it in turns, and if there is 8 of you, people are going to be waiting around a long time for their turn. The audio here is basically focused on the bike's engine noise, and it's really good. As you go through the gears, the bikes sound really beefy and impressive. You know, that reverberation of the exhaust. Each has a differing engine noise from those super bikes to the classics, and you can really be in tune with the bike, knowing what gear to shift and when. And when you hear the roar of that exhaust, it's a complete thrill hearing that bike reach top speeds. And I very much recommend you put in headphones in handheld mode or in docked if you can, to really hear those beefy super bikes. Now, it reminds me quite a bit of Lonely Mountains, which I also reviewed recently. There's no sort of backing music or anything here, although there is music, you know, when you're going through the menus. You know, I think the choices are a little bit questionable, but you know, each to their own. The Switch version has taken a downgrade in visual fidelity, but it runs really smoothly at 60 frames per second for the most part, and the sense of speed is really impressive here. Of course, it's not going to match the more powerful consoles for background detail and bike detail, but it performs great in both handheld and docked, feels smooth and fast, which is what is important here. I didn't hit any stutter, which is great news, and that's what I look for when playing a racing simulation like this. In terms of the bikes themselves, to me, they look really good and detailed enough. As I say, it's only really the backgrounds that you're going to notice that lack of detail. What I would say, and you know, some people will be annoyed by this, is the loading times are absolutely dreadful. Whenever loading up a new race, you're going to be waiting there at least 30 seconds. Now, value, this is kind of where I've got a problem. I have to say that I'm not going to recommend you pay the digital price of £53.99, 60 bucks or 60 euros for our friends in Europe. It's far cheaper to source a physical if you can find one. I mean, I found one here in the UK for about £38, which is a much more realistic price, and I'd be more than happy to pay that for this game, in my opinion, which is going to give you hours upon hours of gameplay, whether it's just a thrill of practicing and making a whole run without falling off your bike, or posting some great times on those leaderboards. Let's talk about that verdict. I've never taken part in this sport, but I can imagine that this game gets a thrill of it pretty much very close, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself when I tuned those controls and bikes to how I like it. It gave me superior control of the beast, and once you are at one with your bike and in the zone on the roads of the UK, there's no better feeling than tearing it up the roads. This is highly recommended if you're into your sport racing sims or a bike enthusiast. It's not for everyone because it's highly challenging. For me, I slightly prefer it to MotoGP. The only limiting factor is the digital high price, but you can source those physicals far cheaper, so just be aware of that if you're looking to purchase this one. For me, it's pretty exceptional, an 8.5 out of 10. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, then you're still supporting. Thank you so much. We very much appreciate it. I want to thank all of our subscribers and members for supporting us. We're coming up to the weekend now, and that's when it really gets busy for SwitchWatch. On Saturday, we let you know all of the upcoming games for the week after, so you can get ready and start planning for what games you want to pick up. Sunday, James gives you all of the latest bargains on the eShop and which ones are well worth picking up on your Nintendo Switch. And don't forget, lastly but by no means least, on Monday, we have our physical games that are being released on the Nintendo Switch with your host Jordan, and that fantastic community spotlight where you show off all of your latest pickups. It's absolutely brilliant. So make sure, if you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button and bell notification so you don't miss any of these fantastic videos. My name's Juan Romero. Hope you enjoyed this review. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.